Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Final Ride for Justice by Jesse Storm, narrated by John Mclain. Prologue. Baker County, Oregon, July 16, 1867. "I know you're out there somewhere," Cass Worley shouted, the crack in his voice betraying the falseness of his bravado. "What are you waiting for? Come out and fight me!" Elam Eskers was sitting behind a boulder, stealing glances every now and then at the man that stood down the hill, holding what he identified as a 20-inch barrel Winchester 66. News of Cass Worley and the couple of men that he had with him had traveled fast, and so he knew that they had terrorized folks over in Grant County for weeks before making their way over to Elam's turf. He also knew that if he went out there to face Worley, he would be dead within minutes because of some coward lackey of his who would jump out of his hiding spot and shoot him in the back. "I suppose you don't live up to your reputation, Eskers," Worley continued. "Are you really that afraid of me? What are you going to do? Are you going to hide forever? I can wait. I will wait. I will wait for as long as I have to. And when you give up, or you get too tired to stay awake, or you get so thirsty that you would even drink your own blood, then I will come for you, and I will shoot you dead." Elam wasn't sure what it was that had made Worley despise him so much. He had never met the man, but he seemed to know a lot about him, most likely due to the reputation he had talked about in his rant. After all, many men had tried to kill him, all of them looking for the glory of being hailed as the fastest gun in Oregon. "Come on, Eskers. You get one chance to stop me from hurting the good folk around here. I know you'll do anything to get me to your beloved sheriff, or you'll die trying," Worley said. Elam couldn't say that he was fond of his incessant talking, but it did give him time to find out where his men were. There was one behind a bush, and one hiding behind a rock, much like Elam himself, and they were both brainless enough to laugh along with Worley at his taunts. 3 against 1 weren't ideal odds, but it would have to do, he thought, as he clutched on to his Colt New Army in his right hand and his recently acquired Remington 58 in his left. With ranges of 225 and 300 feet, respectively, he would have to get much closer to the gang, within range of Worley's carbine. He scratched the back of his head with his Colt, but no matter how much he thought about it, there was only one way to face them. "You talk a lot, Worley," he shouted back, eventually, still hiding behind the boulder. He flinched when Worley shot at him, the sound of his round exploding out of the muzzle echoing through the emptiness of the Oregon outback. Worley and his men stood no chance hitting him from that far, but they didn't seem to care. "Want us to go after him, boss?" one of the men, the one hiding behind the bush, asked. Elam only realized that they were running towards his hiding spot when he risked looking over the rock and saw them approaching. Elam peeked at them over the massive rock and waited, just long enough for them to get within firing range. He shot up from the ground and immediately heard 2 identical shots from their revolvers, but both of them missed him. He took his time. He watched them run, watched the path they were taking, before aiming with both hands. There was a rain of bullets around him, but the men firing them were too frantic, running even as they tried to aim, and soon they were out of ammunition. Elam only needed that 1 second it took them to draw their backup revolvers. He shot his Colt first, and moments later his Remington. He hit the first man in his gut, and blood spilled out of him like a fountain as he dropped to his knees with a pained wail. The other was sent tumbling to the ground, hit straight in the chest. "It's just you and me now, Worley," he said as he made his way towards him slowly, his gaze fixed on him, and his hands. He had his guns by his sides, but his narrowed eyes were keen, and his reflexes fast, and his fingers twitched as he saw him approach, too. "Yes, it is," Worley agreed. He stepped up to the wailing mass of blood and guts that was his partner and aimed his carbine at him, shooting him point blank in the head, before he crouched down and closed the man's eyes. "I loved noise like a brother," he said, as he tossed his Winchester to the side and replaced it with his partner's Smith & Wesson. He began to reload it with rounds that he fished out of the dead man's pocket. Elam simply stood there watching him. "Maybe if you hadn't come after me, he'd still be alive," Elam pointed out. "Maybe if you hadn't dragged him into your atrocities, he'd be living happily somewhere else without you." "Probably," Worley said with a shrug of his shoulder as he shoved the 7th .22 short round in the revolver. "Or maybe he'd be dead because of something else. Maybe it was just his time." As Worley spoke, Elam watched him raise his dead friend's revolver, and his hand shot up before he could even process the scene in front of him. He shot at the man just as the other shot at him, and Elam fell to the ground with a thump. Elam had barely avoided being hit by diving down. Worley was a good shot after all, but Elam was still better. He watched as Worley stumbled backwards. His right shoulder was shattered, and bits of bone and flesh were scattered on the ground, floating in his dripping blood. Even all these years after he had killed his first man, there was something about seeing them in agony that made Elam's stomach churn, and his head lower to avoid the sight of them. "Wait!" Worley exclaimed when he saw Elam pointing his gun at him. He grinned up at him, even as grunts fought their way out of his throat, and then spat at his feet. "Now you can kill me." Before he could finish his sentence, he was already dead. Elam shot him in the head, one last quick, painless shot to take him out of his misery. He shook his head at the man's corpse before he gazed at the horizon. The sun was sinking down into the earth, and he had to head back and take the corpses to the sheriff before he retired for the day. He gathered the 3 horses that the men had left nearby, tethered to some dying tree, and brought them back before throwing the corpses onto the saddles and securing them as well as he could for the short journey to the town. He made sure to grab their guns as well. He really fancied that Smith & Wesson and Worley's carbine. With a whistle, his own horse, a jet-black Morgan with a brown tail and white markings on its legs, hurried to him, and he mounted it. "What do you say, Scout?" he asked. "Shall we go home?" Scout replied with a simple huff that made Elam laugh as he gave him a gentle kick. He made his way back to the town, and despite the events of the day, he enjoyed the ride home under the golden light of a setting sun. Chapter 1. Jackson County, Oregon, April 28, 1878. "Hey, boy," Elam said, as Dusk padded up to him on the porch and placed his head in his lap. The black mutt, now in his final years, reminded him so much of its mother, Elam's beloved June. He had gotten the dog as a gift from his mother several years ago, when he couldn't even be called a young man yet. "Are you hungry? Do you want food?" he asked, as he ran his hand through the dog's short, pitch-black fur. Dusk whined at the mention of food, wagging his tail in excitement. "Look at him," Samson Stockton, Elam's ranch hand, said, as he kicked the door open and stepped outside on the porch. He had a bowl of food and a bowl of water in his hands, and he placed them to the side for Dusk, who ran to them immediately. "He's been whining for food ever since I last fed him." "He's a big guy," Elam pointed out. "Say, any word from the sheriff? I heard there was trouble down in Buncombe. Did he say if it's making its way here?" "How's that any of your business, Elam?" Samson asked. "What are you going to do, grab a gun and go after them? You ain't making no sense. You have to be careful now." "I'll first die before I let anyone touch the people of this place, Samson. If I don't do it, who will? Sheriff Jepp has 2 men down at the station and 5 guns between 'em. You've seen what the world has become. There's no corner without some man out for blood out there. Who's going to help him if I don't? Old Ira Hoster? Mrs. Woolley? No, son. It's my job, Elam said. It's the job of the deputies, Samson countered. But if you're going to be stubborn about it, then no, he hasn't said anything. I'm sure he'll send for us if he needs us. Us? Elam asked. Since when did you stop being a ranch hand and started being a gunman? I ain't no gunman, Elam, but I'm good with a gun, and I learnt from the best, he said. If you're going back out there, I'm coming with you. I'm not letting you go after anyone on your own. I've already told that to the sheriff, and he agrees. Elam was just about to argue when he saw 2 men in the distance. They were on horses, and they were approaching his ranch fast, but they didn't seem to be heavily armed. In fact, one of them looked too presentable to be any danger, with his clean-shaven face and a Panama hat protecting him from the sun. Regardless, it never hurt to be careful, and Elam patted his hip, feeling the comfortable shape of his holster under his hand. Good day, gentlemen, the well-dressed man said as soon as they came up to the porch. He dismounted his horse, a beautiful Palomino. Elam stood up from his porch and walked up to them. Can I help you? The younger of the 2 men tended to the horses as the older one spoke. I'm looking for Mr. Elam Eskers. You're looking at him, Elam said. The man extended his hand and Elam took it, giving him a firm handshake. What can I do for you? My name's Quincy Meiner. I was wondering if we could have a talk about your land here. You see, I'm looking for some land myself, and it seems to me like you have a good little piece of earth here, he said, as he walked around the front porch, seemingly not paying much attention to Elam or Samson. Elam narrowed his eyes at the stranger with a frown, and he crossed his arms over his chest. It ain't for sale. Now, if you want me to recommend you some land around here, I can do that, but I'm afraid this part of the world right here is mine. Meiner chuckled, and it sent a shiver down Elam's spine. In all his years hunting outlaws, he had never heard someone have a laugh so cold as this. He glanced at Samson and found him looking at his feet, unable to even meet the man's eye. Then he saw Dusk run up to him, and he curled protectively around his legs. That's a nice dog you've got there, Meiner said. Everything has a price, Mr. Eskers. Isn't that what they say? You have a profitable land, I'm sure you do, and I'm sure you want to hold on to it. But how long can you do this job for? I'm more than happy to compensate you fairly for your property, and then you can live the rest of your days as a rich man with no worries. You'll never have to work again. How much time do you have left? Elam spat. Surely Quincy Meiner couldn't be much younger than him, if at all. His plump face, red from what Elam could only assume was a skyrocketing blood pressure, had wrinkles and lines just like his. He would have betted that under that hat, Quincy Meiner had half a head of hair. Meiner simply laughed at Elam's words, as if he had found them truly amusing. More than you, I suppose. You see, I don't work like a horse every day, unlike you. I just sit around, drink, and eat. I feel like a robust young man, while I bet you feel more like a relic. I'm doing you a favor here by coming to you. No one else wants land here. You have a chance to retire. I thought you said it seems profitable to you, Elam reminded him, and then he watched as the grin on Meiner's face turned into a scornful frown. I'm not selling the land, Meiner, and that's final. Neither is anyone else in this area, so don't bother asking. This is our place, and you don't seem like you're from around here. No, I'm not, Meiner confirmed. I'm from California, but I thought I'd enjoy a change of scenery, so I came up here, buying land here and there on the way. Guess what? No one has told me no so far." It sounded like a warning, Miner's voice dripping with poison. Surely there were people on the way who didn't want to sell their land, he thought, so Miner must have used other ways to acquire it, and if he wasn't such a religious man, he would have cursed him. All Elam had wanted to do ever since he got the ranch was to live a peaceful life. Living and working at the ranch was his retirement, and there was nothing else in the world that he wanted to do. The mere thought of having to fight off some rich criminal, in the loose sense of the word, made his bones ache and his head pound.
"Well, it seems like I'll be the first then," he said. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do, and I'm sure you two gentlemen have other business to attend as well. I'll have Samson show you out if you'd like."
"No need," Miner said, as he mounted his horse again, with the help of the other man, who hadn't spoken throughout their entire visit. "We can show ourselves out. It will be nice to scope out the land for our upcoming purchases. I'm sure we'll be seeing you soon, Mr. Eskers."
"I'm sure you will,"
Elam replied. Once the two men were out of sight, he threw himself onto the chair that he had out on the deck and pinched the bridge of his nose with his fingers. Samson approached him slowly, shuffling his feet on the deck, before he took a seat across from him. He had his fingers laced in his lap, and when Dusk came to him, he absent-mindedly petted his head.
"Do you think there'll be trouble?"
Elam sighed and turned his head to look at Samson. Seeing the kid so worried put a rope around his heart, a rope so tight that he felt as if he couldn't breathe.
"I'm sure they will. I don't know anything about Quincy Meiner, but he doesn't seem to me like an honorable man. We have to be prepared for anything. In fact, I think we should tell the sheriff about this. I'm sure he'll be visiting other people around here, and I don't know if he'll have the patience to be as gentle with them as he was with us."
"You can't possibly think that he'll just shoot 'em, right?"
Samson asked, his voice trembling ever so slightly. He had grown up with those people. He had practically been raised by the entire community there, after his parents had died when he was just a boy. He couldn't stomach the thought of anything happening to them.
"No, I don't think he'll just shoot them," Elam said.
"I don't think he wants to get his hands dirty unless he has to, but that doesn't mean that he won't be bothering the folks around here.
Terrorizing them, even. Come on, let's get the horses and ride to town. It'd be best if we both talk to the sheriff."
Samson nodded and shot up out of his chair, rushing to get the horses ready. Elam stayed in his chair for a few more long moments, staring in the distance where he could still see some of the unsettled dirt muddying the horizon. He would have to sleep with his colt, he thought, until Quincy Meiner left Jackson County.
Chapter 2.
"May I call you Alf?" Quincy Meiner was sitting in his newly acquired office in the town of Phoenix. The big window on the far wall bathed the room in light, making Judge Alf Starling squint his eyes as he looked at Meiner. Meiner reached for the tumbler that was sitting at the edge of his intricately carved mahogany desk and poured both of them a drink, sliding the second glass closer to Starling.
Sure,
Starling said. He took a large sip of the drink, almost emptying the entire glass.
"So, why did you call me here?"
"I'm trying to meet with the local law enforcement. I want to support your efforts as much as I can, seeing as I am someone who deeply believes in the importance of keeping criminals away from our communities. Now that I'm planning to stay here in Jackson County for a while, I was wondering if there is any way I can be of service to you or to the sheriff," he said.
"It's always nice to have someone like you around, Quincy."
Starling finished the rest of his drink, which Meiner promptly refilled for him. He had plenty of that where it had come from, and the judge's fondness of drinking made Meiner think that he would deplete his supplies rather soon, but it was a small price to pay. The sheriff's been having problems with all sorts of men who waltz up in here and try to take over the place. It's just 3 of them, you know. Sheriff Jepp and his 2 deputies, Zach and Leland. Elam Eskers and his ranch hand help them sometimes, but there's only that much 5 men can do. They can't be in 2 places at once. Some manpower would really benefit this area. I'll do whatever I can. I will call some of my men over from California, and we'll see how we can help you. Meiner promised. Now that you've mentioned Elam Eskers, though, I met him the other day. I was riding around with Jonah, the youngster who showed you in, and we were looking for some land that would be suitable for my business ventures. Oh, Elam's land is one of the best pieces around here, the judge confirmed. He bought it off a widow whose husband had died a few days earlier. It was just his luck, you see. She wanted to go live with her sister, and Elam was looking for a place to settle, and he got it for dirt cheap. Meiner noticed that Starling's glass was once again half empty, and he filled it up again, eager to hear more. Is that so? Did you do the papers for them? Do you know him? Oh, yes, Starling said. I know Elam very well. We've known each other for many years. Why do you ask? Meiner shrugged and took a small sip of his drink, just enough for Starling to not feel like he was drinking alone. Just curious. As I said, I was riding there with my boy, and we came across him. He is a very strange man, Eskers. He wasn't very happy to see me there. Well, he's not very happy to see anyone, Starling joked. I've been telling him that getting himself a wife will soften him up a little, but he doesn't want to hear it. He's been up in that ranch alone with that kid Samson, just working all day. Starling seemed to be very fond of Eskers, Meiner thought. Perhaps he was wasting his time talking to him, but he didn't want to resort to actual violence unless he had to. It was always so banal and so much more trouble than he could ever predict. Besides, he had only come to Oregon with a few men, and he wasn't about to waste them on someone with the reputation of Elam Eskers. No, he had to be smarter than that. He had to find a way to beat Eskers without drawing too much attention, but which would send a message to the rest of the ranchers in the area at the same time. Well, would you look at the time, Alf? Meiner stood up and offered his hand to the judge, eager to get rid of him. Starling hurried to get up from his seat, and he downed the rest of his drink before shaking Meiner's hand. I'm afraid I have some very urgent business to attend to, but it was lovely talking to you. I will send a telegraph to my men, as I promised, and I'll have them here in no time. Thank you, Quincy. I'm sure we'll be talking a lot from now on. Starling headed to the door and opened it, almost jumping all the way to the ceiling when he found Jonah standing right outside. It's his job to keep guard, Alf, Meiner pointed out. He leaned back in his chair and kicked his feet up on his desk, thanking his common sense for not having a wife to yell at him about it. He watched as Jonah showed Starling out, and then he gestured at the young man to come in. It's going to be tougher than I thought. They are all so fond of each other. Is there anything I can do, boss? Jonah's eyes were wide in anticipation, and his boyish eagerness made Meiner scowl at him. I don't suppose you want me to take care of him? No, Jonah. I absolutely do not want you to take care of him. Meiner huffed, burying his face in his hands. The judge can't know Eskers died because I ordered it. Do you understand? Jonah nodded, but then, after a moment of hesitation, he said, No. What does it matter if he knows, boss? I thought the whole point was to bribe him so he wouldn't say anything. You can't bribe everyone, Jonah. This one is one of those that won't be bribed. He likes Eskers too much. He is respected by the community. He goes to church all the time. Do you think someone like that will be happy to let me roam around his territory, taking the land of his friends? No, Jonah said, although a part of Meiner still doubted he understood. He didn't even know why he was explaining it to him. After all, he was nothing but one of his pawns. Then again, he hadn't had any proper human contact in a while, ever since he left California. Perhaps it was just a symptom of being lonely, he thought. "There is something you can do for me, though," Meiner said. "Nothing too hard, and you might even enjoy yourself."
"What is it, boss?"
Jonah asked. "I want you to go and befriend one of those pretty girls from the ranches. Not a bright one who will tell you everything we need to know about the ranches and Eskers." Meiner had seen how Jonah had been looking at the girls in every ranch where they had stopped the other day. Surely one of them would be silly and air-headed enough to fall for him and share everything she knew about the place.
"Any of them?"
Jonah asked, suddenly leaning forward in his seat in deep interest.
"Even the redhead on the Founds Ranch?"
"Yes, even the redhead on the Founds Ranch," Meiner said. "It doesn't matter who, just one of them. Now off you go. Go be your charming self." Jonah all but sprinted out of Meiner's office, and just like that he was finally left alone. So he couldn't rely on the sheriff or the judge to get the land that he wanted, and he couldn't just call his men up to Oregon to take care of Eskers and his neighbors without causing the rage of the entire town. Perhaps he could stage some sort of working accident, he thought, but then again, staging at least 3 different yet similar accidents only a few weeks apart would raise some suspicions. He spent the entire afternoon in deep thought, smoking cigar after cigar, to the point where his office had a smoky haze that smelled of ash. The golden afternoon sun turned into a deep orange in the evening as the sun set behind the horizon, and the redder the sun turned, the redder Meiner's face became with anger. If it wasn't for that damned Elam Eskers, his life would be so much easier. Then, as if divine inspiration struck him, he suddenly had the answer to all his problems. Eskers was renowned for his skills with a gun back in his day, and even now many men would gladly come to Oregon to fight him if they had the chance, and take out some of his neighbors too along the way. Surely Eskers couldn't be as good as he used to be, he thought. Maybe he'd survive a few of them, but eventually a younger, better man would come along and best him. It was simply a matter of time. Meiner sat back in his chair with a delighted smirk on his face. It was time for a celebratory drink. That is, if Judge Starling hadn't already drunk his entire stash.
Chapter 3. "Afternoon, Jep,"
Elam said as he walked into the sheriff's office. He found him slouched over some papers that were haphazardly strewn all across his desk, a mug of steaming coffee clutched in his hand with enough force to make his knuckles turn white. The man needed to take a day off, Elam thought. The sheriff looked up from his papers. "Afternoon, Elam. Samson. What bad news are you bringing me this time?"
"How do you know it's bad news, Jep?"
Elam asked as he took a seat across from the sheriff. Samson stood behind him until Sheriff Jep gestured at him to take a seat.
"Couldn't we just want to pay you a visit?"
"Wouldn't come all the way here to pay me a visit, would you?" Sheriff Jep asked. "Not at this time of day, at least. You would be up at the ranch whipping young Samson here into work." "Elam works just as much, Sheriff," Samson said, getting an amused smile from him. "Sometimes more than me, in fact." "I don't doubt it, son," the sheriff said. "And now he's here to put more work on my plate. I should have him hanged."
"It ain't a crime, Jep,"
Elam pointed out.
"But I'm here to tell you about someone you might want to watch out for."
"Is it that Quincy Meiner?" Sheriff Jep asked. News traveled fast since Phoenix was a small town. His wife had told him everything he could have ever needed to know about the new man in town, how he wasn't married, and how strange that was for his age, how he had brought a few young fellows with him, how he was going around asking about Elam and the other ranchers. She could even do a whole file on him if he asked her to. He just hoped she wouldn't have to.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?